Hello, everyone. Come on in. Come on in. Hey, Smiley. We may not have but a few of us tonight. I wanted to come live. It's been a few days and wanted to come in and see how everybody's doing. I miss you all. And I tried to go live today. Hi, Millie. I was sitting in my car trying to be all incognito. And my little girl decides, hey, I'm going to get away from dad. And she comes and climbs in the car with me. Yes, Smiley, I'm going to actually read about a case that was in Knoxville, Tennessee in 2007, I think it was. And then I'm going to stream some of the riots. And they say peaceful protest, but we'll see what's going on tonight. I will be careful. I will. This is a big trigger warning as far as explaining everything that happened in this case. But I'm out back on my back deck. It's quiet. I prayed the littles don't wake up. There's people in the room with them, my husband, but oh, mercy, my little one. She's been a hot mess today. I'm telling you. I don't know, I bought some juice from Sam's Club and she drank like 4 of them, and she's been a live wire ever since. But also, I got a notification that there's a bear in my subdivision somewhere. So, thank God I'm up on a deck. But y'all, seriously, coming in serious now. Uh, this was one of the worst murders, uh, torture, everything I think you can imagine. So if you're triggered, please be warned right now. Uh, I put trigger warning on everything. You got one of those about a bear one time? Yeah, it seems to be happening a lot in my subdivision for some reason. Can y'all hear me good? I want to make sure you can hear me good. I ain't got my volume all the way up. But I'm going to try to read this to you guys. I'm going to pull it up on the screen. It's a sad situation. But we're going to read this. And the parents have been so distraught. Yes, Millie, it was horrible. It was. Still is. I feel so bad for these parents. I'm going to scroll back up to the top. Might skip through a few things and not read the entire thing. But let's see. Y'all can't see that. Let's pull it up. It just gives me chills just reading this, honestly. But just to warn you guys, let's see. That's not what I want up there. Let's go right here. Yes. Okay. Shannon Gail Christian was 21 and Chris Newsome Jr. was 23. They were from Knoxville, Tennessee. They were kidnapped on the evening of January 6, 2007, when Christian's vehicle was carjacked. The couple were, taken to a rental house. Both of them were arred, tortured, and murdered. 4 males and 1 female, were arrested, charged, and convicted in this case. In 2007, a grand jury indicted Latavius Darnell Cobbins, LaMarcus Duvall Davison, George Giovanni Thomas, and Vanessa Lynn Coleman on counts of kidnapping, robbery, and murder. Also, in 2007, Eric Dwayne Boyd was indicted by a federal grand jury of being an accessory to a carjacking resulting in seriously bodily injury to another person and misprision of a felony. In 2018, I can't believe that took that long, Boyd was indicted on several state charges, state level charges of kidnapping, robbery, and murder. For 5 defendants, Eric Boyd, Laballas Cobbins, Lamarcus Davison, and George Thomas had multiple prior felony convictions. After a jury trial, Davis was convicted and sentenced to death by lethal injection. Cobbins and Thomas were convicted and sentenced to life in prison without parole. And Vanessa Coleman was convicted of facilitating the crimes and sentenced to 53 years. Eric Boyd was convicted at the federal level and sentenced to 18 years in federal prison for being accessory after the fact to carjacking. He was convicted on state level charges over a decade later in 2019. All of the state convictions were initially set aside because of misconduct by presiding judge, who has since been disbarred. Trials were originally slated for summer and fall of 2012. The orders for the retrials of Davison and Cobbins were subsequently overturned by the Tennessee State Supreme Court, and their convictions and sentences stand. The Coleman and Thomas retrials resulted in convictions, but with a reduced sentence for Coleman and the same sentence for Thomas. So, because the judge was actually in trouble during that time span, they had to do a retrial and they got lesser sentencing, which is insane to me. I'm going to read on a little bit, but it gets a little graphic. What basically happened, I'm not going to read word for word. They were planned to go to a dinner and go to a friend's party. This is verbatim, not verbatim, guys. That afternoon, Christian went to a friend's apartment to get ready, and she waited as her friend left to go on to the party. She waited for Newsome to pick her up. They were standing beside his vehicle and were embraced, I guess, hugging. And then the assailants decided to attack the couple. Both were forced into the backseat of Christian's SUV at Pew Pew Point, had their hands tied behind their backs, and were taken to Davison's house. Both Christian and Newsome were arred. Newsome is believed to have been arred inside Davison's house, according to the testimony of the Knox County acting medical examiner. Newsome was sodomized with the object and arred by at least one of the perpetrators. He is also taken to a set of railroad tracks where he is forced to walk barefoot to the location where he was murdered. Prosecutors believe a mangled dog leash found on a hillside leading up to the railroad tracks was used to force Newsome to walk to his D. When Newsome was emmed, his hands were bound behind his back, his feet were bound together. He was blindfolded with a bandana and gagged with a sock. He wore only a shirt and underwear. Newsome was S in his neck and the back. Newsome He survived this pew-pewing initially, but later was pew-pewed again in the head. The fatal shot was fired with the pew-pew's muzzle against his head above his right ear, and it severed his brainstem. After K. Newsome, the assailants wrapped him in a comforter, poured gasoline on him, and set his body on fire. I told you guys, this is horrendous. Horrendous, okay? Hello, Lisa B. Always. Sorry, guys, this is so violent, but the justice. I believe they got justice, but, you know, I can imagine what these parents went through, still going through. That's your baby, you know, that's your babies, guys. There is an evil, cruel world, demonically influenced, I do believe. Christian was held prisoner inside Davidson's house, mostly in the north bedroom. Prosecutors believe that Coleman held Christian captive while the male offenders were ilming Newsome. After ilming Newsome, the assailants returned to Davidson's house, where they beat and repeatedly arred Christian. The medical examiner testified that Christian died after hours of torture, sustaining severe head injuries and suffering severe injuries to her area and mouth due to assaults. Her injuries were consistent with being arred with an object. According to the medical examiner, the attack Christian endured was extreme and much more than a simple assault. Prosecutors believe that Christian was tied to a chair and orally arred by Davison and Cobbins. She was also beaten, kicked in her groin, and beaten on the head. Christian suffered extensive hemorrhaging to her head and area. Additionally, Christian suffered bruises and carpet burns on much of her body. According to Davidson's confession, during Christian's captivity, she said she didn't want to die. I'm going to take a break right there. Is this okay with you guys? I hope it's not triggering anybody. Because it's horrible, Smiley. Horrible, horrible. While Christian was still alive, in order to remove DNA evidence, now this is where it gets even worse. Sick. Christian's attackers poured bleach down her throat and scrubbed her body, including her bleeding and battered area, with bleach. Christian was bound in a hogtie fashion with curtains and strips of bedding. Her face was tightly covered with a small trash bag, and her body was stashed in 5 large trash bags. Christian, who was naked except for a camisole and sweater, was tied in a fetal position, placed inside a residential waste disposal unit inside the kitchen of the home, and covered with sheets. The medical examiner testified at trial that there was evidence that Christian slowly suffocated to death. Christian died between the afternoon of January 7th and the afternoon of January 8th. As Christian was suffocating to death, Davison left to spend time with his girlfriend and gave her Christian's personal items. Davison also used Newsome's cell phone and was seen wearing Newsome's clothes or shoes. Investigation. I'm not going to read through all this, but from my understanding, the family and friends were trying to text with no response, trying to call. Later around 11 p.m., the friends went to the apartment where they had been kidnapped and found his truck in the parking lot, unable to locate Christian's SUV. A driver who worked for Waste Connection arrived at the house where they had Christian, which is the girl, at 12:30 a.m. on January 7th. He noticed the lights were on and the house seemed busy for the time of night. He saw a 4Runner at the front of the house and with its porch lights on. The witness later observed the 4Runner driving slowly by him. The car slowed down for 20 seconds as the occupants were checking him out. He saw 4 men in the car. Another witness who lived around 1 block heard 3 pops from the direction of the train tracks about 1:45 a.m. Newsome's body was discovered near a stead of nearby railroad tracks on January 7th at 12:20 p.m. by a Norfolk Southern Railroad employee. The failed calls, now this is where it gets me, guys. Christian failed to answer the calls on January 7th from her mother and friend. Christian also did not attend work. The couple's friends and family tried to find them, checking local hospitals, filing missing persons report. Now listen to this. Christian's parents requested help from Ellie, but were told that they would have to do the search themselves. I want comments on that, guys. That were unknown to the perpetrators. Correct. Yes, Lisa, they were unknown. Just general hate and evil. Yeah. Yes. Evil, evil, evil. But when the parents of the girl went to Ellie, okay, they were told to do their own searches. Now, is that not insane? Okay, let's see. Several items were missing from Christian's vehicle, including a teddy bear and photographs Christian kept there, and her phone charger and iPod. The front seats were pushed back, and Christian could not have reached the pedals. The floorboard was covered with mud, inconsistent with how Christian maintained her vehicle. When police went to Chipman Street on January 9th, they found the house unoccupied and Christian's body in a trash can in the kitchen. Christian's body was stashed in 5 large trash bags. The bags had Davison's prints. Davison's prints were also found on the box of garbage bags. Davison's SPERM was found in Christian's area, while Cobbins was found in her mouth. Also inside the house were several items that belonged to Christian and Newsome, including Christian's purse, clothing she had in her vehicle, Christian's shoes, camera photographs, which were ripped and burned, an iPod, and Newsome's baseball caps and driver's license. Several of the victims' belongings had Davis's prints. The items from Christian's SUV were shoved into trash bags, in addition to the SPERM found on Christian's body. Davison's SP was found on Christian's jeans, while Cobbins was found on her camisole, sweater, and jeans. Shell casings found at the Davidson's house matched the bullets used to K Newsome. How can you be that evil? How can you be that evil, guys? This is beyond sick, evil, and twisted. These were, from my understanding, kids from an upscale neighborhood. I know the area that they were from, and you don't see stuff like this. But the sad part about this is when my husband used to pastor another church, this happened right down from that church. Okay. I'd take it public if Ellie said anything like that to me. Now, her dad, Lisa, he went public. All parents went public. I was trying to find film or video before I came on, but they did rallies. There are scholarships set up in their name. I mean, it's a major thing. Let me go back. They seized the computer on which Thomas and Cobbins had been viewing news coverage of the Elms. Police also seized a purse that contained several of Christian's belongings, including her cosmetic bag and change purse. Additionally, police found Christian's overnight bag. Thomas Cobbins and Coleman was arrested in Lebanon, Kentucky on January 11th. But, yeah, I'm going to get out of this one. And I'm going to pull up a video that they did for remembering their lives back in January. We are going to pull that video up and share that. Let me get it to work correctly. Let me add to stage. Let's play this. If my internet will work correctly, then we'll move over to the supposedly peaceful protests. It's insane what's going on in the world today. Oh, there's going to be an ad.
Coming up, we're looking back at one of those horrific murder cases in East Tennessee history. 18 years ago, we first heard the names Shannon Christian and Chris Newsome. Since their brutal deaths, their families have shared their stories, so they'll never be forgotten. Today, we're looking back at the crimes that impacted these two families and what they did to help future crime victims and protect other families from similar pain.
There's credit to WB, our channel 10.
10 About Town on WBIR starts now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brittany Bailey. It is one of the most shocking and horrifying murder cases to ever happen in East Tennessee, one that took two young lives full of promise and put their families through 8 criminal trials. The tragic murders shocked the community and the families of these two young victims. 21-year-old Shannon Christian attended the University of Tennessee. Her boyfriend, Chris Newsome, was a 23-year-old former Halls High School baseball standout. Armed men carjacked and killed them just a few days into the new year of 2007. 2 young lives were lost and 2 families were forever changed. We do have a warning. The details of this case may not be suitable for some of you. It all started on a Saturday night, January 6, 2007. Shannon Christian and her boyfriend, Chris Newsome, were planning to hang out and watch movies before going to a party later in the evening. Friends last saw them alive around 9 p.m. Not long after, the pair was carjacked in Shannon's 4Runner from a North Knoxville apartment complex.
Yes, Lisa.
3 men took them, brothers Lamarcus Davidson and Latalvis Cobbins and Eric Boyd. The carjackers blindfolded them and drove them in Shannon's 4Runner to Davidson's rented house on Chipman Street, just about 3 miles from the apartment complex. According to the investigation, Chris Newsome was raped an hour or 2 before his death. In his final moments, he was marched barefoot to a nearby railroad track. He was shot 3 times in the neck, back, and head. The killers had stuffed a sock in his mouth, tied his wrists and ankles, and covered his head with a sweatshirt tied around his neck with shoestrings. His body was doused in gasoline and set on fire. A railroad employee found his body the next afternoon near the tracks. Shannon was brutally tortured and raped in multiple ways. DNA evidence suggests she was raped by Cobbins and Davidson. She was hit in the head, and bleach was used in her mouth and vaginal area to try to destroy DNA evidence. She was hogtied and put in a garbage bag while still alive, with her head wrapped in a second garbage bag. She suffocated to death. On January 9th, Knoxville police stormed the home on Chipman Street after a fingerprint found in Shannon's Toyota led them there. That's where they found her body, stuffed in a garbage can in the kitchen. By then, the suspects had fled, and the search was on to find them. There would be 2 additional names added to that list of suspects in the murders of Shannon Christian and Chris Newsome. In all, 5 people were charged with multiple counts. Lamarcus Davidson was known as Slim. He was the crime ringleader and 25 years old at the time.
The punishment is death.
He's now on death row in Nashville. His brother, Latalvis Cobbins, was 24 years old when the murders happened. Jurors convicted him of rape, murder, and facilitation of murder. He's serving a life sentence with no chance at parole. DNA from both of the brothers was found on Shannon's body. Eric Boyd was the oldest of the suspects. He was 35 years old at the time. He and Davidson had served time together in prison. He also was the only suspect to not face state charges initially. Instead, a federal jury convicted him of being an accessory to carjacking. 24-year-old George Thomas, a friend of Cobbins's, was a weekend guest at the Chipman Street home. His attorneys argued he was homeless at the time of the killings and that he was not a willing participant. Thomas, though, was found guilty of 38 counts by a jury in Hamilton County. Vanessa Coleman was 18 years old and was dating Cobbins at the time of the killings. An out-of-county jury found her guilty of facilitation in Shannon Christian's murder, along with kidnapping and rape, but she was found not guilty of murder. She was sentenced to 53 years in prison, but after a November 2012 retrial, a different jury convicted her on similar but lesser charges, and she was sentenced to 35 years in prison. Those 5 suspects are all guilty for their various roles in the kidnapping, rapes, and murders. 2 young people who had their whole lives ahead of them were taken far too soon. Shannon and Chris had just started dating in November of 2006, a few months before their deaths. But Mary Newsome told us her son adored Shannon. Shannon Gale Christian was a senior majoring in sociology at the University of Tennessee.
Too.
The 2003 Farragut High School graduate was popular with an engaging smile and loved to play golf. She would have turned 40 years old this April. Shannon Christian's boyfriend, Chris Newsome, was 23 years old. He worked as a carpenter. He had been a baseball standout at Hulls High School. He was a pitcher and outfielder. His mom says as a baby, his pediatrician told her Chris would be an athlete. She says he was that and then some. He loved all kinds of sports. He graduated in 2002 and attended Pellissippi State. He had 2 older sisters and an older brother. Dad Hugh tells us his son was a talented carpenter whose crown molding is featured in some of the homes in Knox County. Chris would have turned 42 in September. The torture slayings thrust the Christian and Newsome families into the spotlight when the initial frantic search began to find the missing couple. It was Shannon's parents and friends who found her abandoned 4Runner near Chipman Street thanks to a search party they had put together. And since the early days of this tragic story, East Tennessee has stood behind both families, from their close friends and relatives to people they've never met. Gary and Dina Christian were perhaps the parents remembered most. It's hard to forget Gary's emotions during the trials. The couple has since divorced. Gary is now married to Lori. We'll have more with the families coming up a little later. Now, all these years later, it's a lot trying to keep track of the suspects, their trials, and their sentences. What we do know is this. On January 11th, 2007, authorities arrested LaMarcus Davidson, Latalvis Cobbins, George Thomas, Eric Boyd, and Vanessa Coleman. Their trials would follow in the next 2 years. Latalvis Cobbins was the first to go on trial on state charges in 2009. Cobbins was convicted on multiple charges, including first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life without parole. Next up was the trial for his half-brother, LaMarcus Davidson, the ringleader. Davidson was found guilty on all counts and was sentenced to death in October of 2009. In December of that same year, George Thomas was convicted on multiple counts and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Vanessa Coleman, who was dating Cobbins at the time, was found guilty of facilitation of Shannon Christian's murder, kidnapping, and rape. She was acquitted on murder charges, though, and sentenced to 53 years in prison, with a later retrial reducing her sentence to 35 years. Of the 5 suspects, Eric Boyd's case perhaps stands out the most. First, he was the oldest of the 5 suspects, 35 at the time. He was the only suspect to not face state charges at first. Instead, he was found guilty in federal court of being an accessory to kidnapping by hiding Davidson after the killings. And he was convicted in federal court before the others went on trial in state court. The families, in particular, the Newsomes, always thought Boyd played a larger role in their son's murder, but
I
Prosecutors at
think he
first
got
said they
18
didn't
years.
have the evidence to pursue a murder charge against him. But Boyd was eventually indicted in state court and convicted in 2019 of 2 counts of first-degree murder, along with rape and kidnapping. That same year, he was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences, plus an additional 90 years. After those initial convictions, talk of the crimes settled down just a bit. But then the unthinkable happened. A scandal in the Knox County courts would lead to retrials for some of the suspects. More on that coming up after this.
Okay, I think I'm going to
Stay
stop
tuned
that
for a
right
special
there.
free offer from Flash Force Tactical Flashlight.
But yeah, that was a little bit of that horrible, horrible thing that happened in Knoxville, Tennessee. In Knoxville, I mean, you hear of some bad things, but I mean, it's pretty calm compared to certain cities in certain states of the U.S. I'm going to give credit to WBIR for that. And I'm going to learn how to work all this. But have you guys been seeing, I'm sure you have, of all the protests? And, well, they say protests. Some are protests, and I'm great, that's fine to protest. But when it turns violent, that's a different story to me. I think that once it turns violent, you need to handle the situation. Lee said Tennessee LE judge screwed it up. No wonder Sebastian's case can't be solved, in my opinion. Yeah. I'm not sure. I could go back and research what it was, but yeah, the judge in Knox County had gotten in trouble, so therefore they had to find a different judge. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I don't want to. I think he allegedly um, had drug charges or something. You never know, honestly, how corrupt a how do I say this? A town or LE or people in authority can actually be, unless you have worked in it and seen it firsthand. Yes, system. Seen it firsthand. In a perfect world, we would have people to protect our kids, protect us. It's so sad. I think that's why I'm so overprotective of my kids. And, I have one that's an adult and one that's about to be an adult. And I'm still overprotective. And people make fun of me, but I really don't care, because I'm going to try with everything in me. And sometimes these parents can protect their kids as much as possible, but it turns into, there's monsters out in this world, and we just got to stay in touch with our families. We have to be grateful for every minute we pay taxes to protect us, in my opinion. Yes, Lisa, we do. We do. And there are some out there that really are doing a great job and want to protect us, and take care of us. But, man, I'm going to turn these riots on, and I call them riots because usually I don't know what's happening right now because I haven't been on there for a little while, but we'll watch it. Did you guys know also, I heard, now this is allegedly, this is not totally 100% positive. Okay, so don't take my word. But from what I've heard is that some of these protests are going to be actually going all across the U.S. on Saturday, June 16th. So just be aware. Okay, yes, yes, they are riots that's going on right now. Just be aware of your surroundings. I feel like, I'm not going to try to be out Saturday, to be honest, because you never know. There's so much uncertainty in the world today. It's scary, folks. And I worry about my kids. As I get older, I think, when it is time for me to go on, what are our kids going to have to face one day? What are our grandkids going to be facing one day? It's scary. I know that I'm ready to go, but I don't want to go because I want to protect them on a mother hen. So we're going to pull this up because you all are probably tired of me talking and blabbing on. Let's see. There was also a map of the supposedly protests that will be going on. Let me see if I pull this up right. Hang on, guys. I think I almost heard my little one up. I may have to go check. Let's see here. Let's try to pull this up. No, that's not it. Sorry. Let's try to pull this up. It's hard to see when they're so little. Everything is so little when you try to share the screen. Let's see. Where was it at? Let's try this. Sorry, guys, I'm trying. See if I can pull this up. See what we can see. Oh, my word. Let's see if you're seeing what I'm seeing. Come on. My internet doesn't want to work. You guys aren't seeing what I'm seeing. Hang on. I promise I will learn this. I will learn this. Yes. Let's see. I'm sorry, guys. Let's try to find the local. Okay. Let's try this, Lisa. Okay. Let's see if it'll start now. There we go. See if we can turn the volume up. Hey, Susie. We're trying to get my internet to work. Maybe if I click on it again. I'm sorry, guys. Guys, we're frozen. I wonder if the blue dot in the desk is a target for the reds on Saturday. Hi, Niner Nana. Hello. Susie Little. Hello, everyone coming in. I'm going to try to restart this. I'm not sure, Lisa. I'll have to check that map that I seen on the guy's thing. Let's try this. Gosh. Okay, now we're going to go back out. We're going to try to pull it up again. Sorry, guys, my internet's freezing.
Definitely a disruption, and it is helpful to see this video from above from the chopper because you
One
can
thing
see from our
too,
reporters on the
I'm gonna
ground the
give
situation
credit
changes so quickly. It
to,
looks like no
I
one's
think
there,
it's
but maybe they're around the
CBS,
corner. So we get a better perspective here from the
Los
helicopter. And
Angeles,
of course, we will continue to follow this
CBS
throughout the
News.
night. We'll be right back.
Well, they're gonna come back. Let me turn that down. What do y'all think about the protest? What do you think about what's going on? I'm going to mute that so that way we can talk. It is insane to me what LA, Los Angeles has putting up with. From my understanding, because their mayor did not contact the federal officials to bring the troops in, okay? Therefore, the troops are not allowed to do anything but protect the federal buildings. If the mayor had contacted the federal officials to come in, which they said that they didn't need any help, if they had contacted them on their own reconnaissance, then they would have been able to make arrests. I think that's a crazy law. And now there's a lawsuit against the Trump administration by Los Angeles mayor saying that this has caused more problems. And whether you're Democrat or Republican or independent Republican, I don't care. Okay? But to me, it's common sense. If you need help, you need help. Lisa says, in my opinion, they're making it easy to know what country is flying their home country's flags. Yeah. Nana says, it's crazy. Susie Little says, I believe in peaceful protest, nonviolence. Me also. And you can do that. You know, you can peacefully protest. But I feel like they're going to get fed up and they're going to get tired of it sooner or later. I mean, the way I see it, if you are here legally and you are working and you're a family, you know, and you're here legally, then, you know, that's fine. But there are rules in place for the United States, for us also. We can't just go do what we want. We can't go downtown and draw graffiti all over the buildings and expect that we're not going to get arrested, in my opinion. You know, yes, the protests are not peaceful. Not in my opinion, they're not. But I don't know when they're ever going to come back on, guys, but we'll wait and see what's going on. Who feels like this is going to spread over the U.S.? I'm kind of worried because I know that it's in Los Angeles. Oh, and they're back. Let's watch for a second instead of talking. Let me turn the sound up.
Now it looks like the crowd is kind of growing as they join this march.
It looks like not only a procession of not only marchers, pedestrians, but also vehicles. That's
So
what it
it's
looks like
growing.
from here.
And
it just,
guys, there's a curfew
obviously, though,
going
even
on.
if you're driving, you're not supposed to be in this area. So that brings up another question as to how police are actually going to get everybody out of the area, not just people on foot, but also, cars. Because when that curfew takes effect, that's for everybody, right?
Yeah, no, it doesn't matter if you're in a car or not, but you have the cars on the right side of the screen are driving on the wrong side of the road too. So when you look at that, I mean, now you've got that issue that the law enforcement's going to have to deal with as well if they're going to come down here. We haven't seen anybody on the ground. Left side of your screen is LAPD transport buses and vans that are certainly being used to transport people. The LAPD helicopter is back over near that screen, the shot on the left there, which is back towards the Civic Center area, Little Tokyo area, where
So guys,
SkyCal is over almost into
there
Grand
is a
Street. They're almost coming to come
curfew.
up on Crypto.com Arena, LA Live,
But
that
guess
kind of
what?
area. We just passed the Walt Disney Concert Hall on Grand,
They're
and as
not
far as we can tell
abiding by the
here,
curfew.
we haven't seen any law enforcement. These
But
guys are just kind of
LA
marching, and they've marched away from
is
where that large
allowing them to
contingency of
still be
officers
out.
was. And you
This
see the
makes
cars
no
both sides of the
sense.
street, even driving the wrong way.
It's like
Maybe that's why they're going on
afraid
both sides of the street,
to
because of
hurt
the people
feelings.
walking.
Yeah.
They, can't
Being a
necessarily
business
get
owner
through, or
in
they
the
don't
area.
want to hit
Yeah,
somebody.
could you
Right.
Maybe
imagine
they're trying to get out of there.
And the
going
police
down
have been
the
making
road
arrests. We saw many people being loaded up into these buses,
with your kids
going
in the
peacefully
car,
from what we saw.
and
Tom
seeing what
Waite is
they're
on the ground there in
doing
downtown
to
LA.
the
Tom, has
cars?
the scene changed near you?
shooting fireworks?
Yeah, just in the past few seconds here, a number of buses pulled up, which appear to be buses that will carry people who would potentially be arrested. They just arrested a number of people and loaded them onto one of the white buses not far from where I'm standing. Yeah, it's kind of unclear where these are headed.
Yeah, I wouldn't
But we'll
try to
see.
go
I
to
mean,
work.
there's
I promise
this
you
area
that.
was kind of really where a lot of stuff played out. A lot of chaotic activity was playing
It's
out.
happening in
Right when the
Chicago,
curfew took
Dallas.
effect, and there were a number of officers, that swarmed this
I
area.
even heard
And
it
you can
was
see a
in
lot of them still on
Tampa
your
smelling.
screen. That came
Have you
here
heard
to
that?
make a number of arrests and,
Is anybody
disperse
around
the crowd. Many of the people in the crowd did
Florida,
comply. They left
Georgia?
and went off
Have
into
you
different
heard
directions
anything
here.
happening
This
in
is kind
those
of the main
states?
spot, right? Because we're right outside
Alabama?
of the federal complex where the detention center is, right on the other side of the building here. And now you're looking live at some kind of convoy here of LAPD cruisers that are back here on the scene. And it's unclear, I think this is maybe sort of a staging area where they're conducting, carrying out some of their operations throughout the city.
Susie,
And
you heard about
perhaps
Tampa?
bringing people and personnel back
Yeah.
through this area. They have a number of
It's crazy to me.
police here.
Earlier,
just
there
on
was
every
a lady
corner
having a seizure,
where Temple in
and
Los
they
Angeles,
just left her.
just to the east of City Hall.
LE
And,
didn't.
you know,
But the group
people
that
have
was
just
with her
been,
just
kind
left
of
her and ran.
out here protesting, and now there are a few stragglers, actually.
Yeah,
Say again?
right next to you, right? Waving
again?
flags.
watching these guys behind.
Yeah. Yeah. I was
Guys,
just wondering. There's a
yes,
guy.
Molly,
It's like, what are you doing?
this
Are you just going to
world,
tempt
I'm kinda
officers? And
scared
now
of-
I think they've seen him.
They were
I don't know.
hollering martial
We're
law
up above on a plaza though, so
for
it would take a minute
LA
for him to get
the other
apprehended.
night.
It would officers would have to come up on a wall or run up the street. So I don't know,
It is
how
scary.
they would make their way up here. They're leaving now, so very smart of them. I don't think police are in any mood to mess around. And for people who were watching
Yeah, I
earlier, they
think
were
police are
very
fed up and tired, to be
intense about
honest.
making sure we were credentialed to be here, and it
And to
was
destroy
it was
such a
very
pretty city. I've
matter
never
of
been
fact.
there.
There was it was no
But
wiggle room, right? So they just wanted to make
to
sure
me, it's
anyone who
also
was out
scary.
here was permitted to be so, and under
my
the
opinion,
order
Jay.
that the mayor announced just a few
Protest,
hours
you know,
ago. So
all you want.
this area where
But
it
why
was,
tear
this is
everything
where
up?
all the
We're
protesters
to
kind of
leave for
gathered
the
back. There was a march through the
taxpayers
city
to
earlier.
pay,
Then
and
the
then we're
people
gonna
they
give
went
them
all
a
the way over to
permit.
LA
Oh,
Live,
don't
and they came
hurt
all the way
them.
back here. They
But they're throwing
had
fireworks at us.
a
Come
rally,
on.
and I got to say, very peaceful rally.
They're throwing
Nobody.
bricks.
When I
They were
was here, I
throwing
mean,
rocks.
there was a few moments where people
There's
were
one
tossing
that was
stuff, but
throwing
very,
bricks
very
at
peaceful.
cars.
And it was just a
And
total
the
range of
FBI,
people of
he's wanted by the
backgrounds,
FBI.
ages. It was incredible to see, just because I've been reporting at night, and I've
Look
seen a
at
lot
that.
of violence, a lot of clashes, a lot
Imagine,
of
too,
projectiles being
y'all,
thrown,
if somebody
police
was
having to
sick or
disperse people with
hurt,
tear gas. And I just
and
want to
you had
reiterate
to
too,
go,
this is only going on in little
you know,
little
to
corners
the
of the city, little
hospital or
slivers.
something. How
We've
could you
been
even
reporting
get
this
there?
all day, and all of all
How
of us have
could
been saying this. I just think
a
it bears
cop
repeating.
come to you?
We don't want people to
How
think that
could
elevating
emergency
down. It's not.
vehicle?
There are little pockets
Thank you,
of trouble
SEC.
here and there, but
Number one.
I have to say today really was one of those
Thanks
moments
for
where we saw
joining
a
us.
big group of people getting together, marching together, showing some solidarity, and really just kind
I
of
know. Lisa,
expressing
mainstream
themselves
media
and making making their
killing
feelings
me.
known. It was very appropriate, and it was
They are
it was good to see. Just
cracking me
it was
up.
encouraging,
I'm
just
like,
having
oh yeah,
seen
this
some
is
of the
so
uglier
peaceful.
sides
Look at the
of these
whole town. It's
confrontations
so
the past few
peaceful.
nights.
You know, it was also really refreshing to see.
Our
This was
governor needs to
Lori
go, in
shot,
my
Tom,
opinion. Did
an
you see his
interfaith
press release? He's a
vigil
joke.
that
We
was
just had a
taking
major
place, and
fire
there
in
were
LA.
people there from
I
all
definitely
walks of life,
don't
all
need
different
more
faiths.
chaos. In my opinion, the military
That was
needed
pretty
to gain control at this
special
point. In my
because you
opinion.
could tell that
Nina
people
and
of all
Anna,
different,
yes. Yes.
different
Are
kinds of
you
people were
from that
there
area?
with one purpose, and then we saw
I'm going to
members
hit
of the
mute real
clergy
quick,
walking
guys,
down the street with
and
this
I'm going to
white
check
robe. And,
on
you
something, and
know,
I'll
I mean,
be
if you've
right
been
back.
around for a while, that just brings you back to some of the protests that we have seen over the years. And I'm going to go all the way back to those civil rights marches, the Vietnam protests, where people, you know, oftentimes when you take away the violence and the emotion that gets people to be antagonistic, this was a way you saw people coming together. And that was pretty nice to see.
And right now we're looking at chopper video from above, and they are breaking the law because there's a curfew in effect right now. But other than that, it does seem peaceful. We're not seeing the tagging, the vandalism, the throwing things at law enforcement that we saw later in the night last night. It does appear to be peaceful from what we can see.
And you wonder, I mean, are they going to their cars? I know, Tom, where you are, I saw that sign that said mall, Los Angeles Mall, parking. I think I'm kind of familiar with that because for many years ago, I was on a jury in the federal courthouse, and I parked in that lot. So,
That's a story I want to hear a
I'll
little
tell you
bit
about
later.
it.
No, it's
So
not.
that's where I know where you
Parking
are.
garage is closed right now, Pat.
I mean, plain and simple.
Yeah, if I recall, I think it
Oh
closed
my
at
gosh.
6 p.m. every night. But there were a few of us, if we stayed
So
later, that they were,
peaceful.
you know, we
Could
were
you
able to get
imagine
out. But I was just
the people
asking
that
that question
also
because
live
you
in the
wonder
city?
where some of these people are. They
Could you imagine if
are
we're
they
animals?
exiting the area? You know.
Oh, my goodness.
So
Crazy.
that was the
I'm gonna
spot
watch
where
for a little bit longer,
there were a
guys.
number
We'll
of people
stream
they
for a little
arrested
bit
right in that
longer.
little entrance you're talking about,
I
Pat.
don't want to
So
hold
I don't know.
you guys up all night
I don't
long.
know. I think they've just shut that
I
whole
like
area
seeing your
down.
opinions there.
And now I'm just curious because
Setting cars on
I'm a
fire
little
is
distracted because there's a
definitely
couple of guys here
crazy.
who are clearly
Yes.
not media and they're just kind of hanging
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And so I am just kind of waiting to see if police react to it. They seem to know. They're like aware of
Yes.
their their
It's insane.
you know, being
These
here.
people
So I'm
right
just
here-
kind of waiting to see
Insane,
what's going
guys.
to happen. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
there's a
some
few
guy taking a
people, and
picture.
they,
I don't know.
that
You know,
okay, yeah, that guy. But one of them,
everybody
he
has
just looked very young. I
different
don't know
opinions
but yeah,
and
so I'm just kind of trying
everything.
to figure out. You know,
But
they checked our
common
credentials a little
sense
earlier, and
teaches
some
us.
of these folks were not
Could you
here. So I'm
imagine
just trying to figure out what's going on
what
and
this
getting the
is
lay of the land. It's all
costing
very fluid as
LA?
we've been seeing the last few nights. So
But,
you know,
you
we're just trying
know,
to figure
they
out.
seem like
Yeah,
it's,
here comes.
oh, it's
no,
okay, it's
I'm not
okay.
sure.
And
We
we
don't
should
want
be
Looks like they
clear
are,
while
hurt nobody's
while you're
feelings.
talking about this, Tom, sorry to interrupt you. While you're talking about this, the curfew does apply to everyone except the media who shows proper credentials, homeless people who live in the area, residents of the area, and then people who work in the area. So there are some people who are permitted to be there, but everyone else is not permitted to be there, including the people we're watching marching down the street, or that we just saw
Yeah,
marching down
we
the
all
street on the
have
right-hand
rules.
side, and now there's
We
clearly
have
some
rules
activity going
for a
on.
reason.
Yeah, several vehicles. Hey, Tom, are those
I agree
federal
with you.
officers still out there?
You know what? I don't see them anymore, but I wonder
Guys,
if these
please
vehicles
hit
have just
that like
left
button.
here.
I'm sure
You know,
all of
like
you
I said, this
have.
seems like kind of a staging area.
I'm
They're
trying to
gonna,
grow my
all these
channel.
CHP
We're going to talk
cruisers
about
that
Sebastian
now are
tomorrow.
they're all going off
I want to do
to the
more research.
south. So I wonder
and
where
different
they are
things.
headed. If this is,
My heart hurts
you know,
for
if
him
they're
every day.
heading this way to then come back around to confront some of the other folks that may not, you know, that are potentially violating the curfew. So
Did you
we
all
don't
see
know
Dallas
exactly,
last night?
but
What it
this
looked
definitely
like?
appears to be the kind of main staging area where
Those
one of
LA
the
were
main
not
staging areas. Obviously,
playing
there could be
games.
others, and I can
Let
only
me
speak
tell
to what
you.
I'm seeing. But I have not seen any of those officers. In fact, none of them are out front of the federal building anymore. There may be a contingent of them right inside. I know there were earlier because some of them came out when the crowd started getting bigger, and they
at the
I think
busing.
just wanted to show that, you know, that there was, you know, strength in numbers that came out to kind of like make it clear, like, hey, we're out here.
I
and
hope
so
they
on.
get a
So,
hold of
yeah,
this
it's
city.
just a
You know,
kinda-
I hope they get
it's not-
control.
I won't say tense out
It's
here.
sad.
It's a little bit.
It's
like there's
really
a little bit of
sad.
that. but
what
it's
the
not like
law
before
enforcement
where, you know,
has happened to go
just a
through.
few hours ago where you weren't
Yeah,
sure
Dallas, we were
when the curfew took
actually
effect, you
in
know,
a
were police
park,
going to just
guys,
blast through and start making
and
arrests?
the LE
So right now,
was
just sort
moving
of
in on
calm,
them,
but
wasn't putting
also
up
very
with
active
nothing, and they got
out in
gone.
Rutabaga.
SEC
Probably kind of
2, think
eerie, Tom.
about how this is affecting the
A
residents'
calm
Yeah.
kind of
lives.
eerie.
Very much.
Yeah, that's how it feels here.
Yep.
Okay, well, we're
Elderly,
going to
children,
take
and those
more
who
of our
suffer
chopper
from
shot,
anxiety
Tom,
disorders.
and
It's awful. You can't live
talk to Mike for a
normally, and
minute.
it's
You
not
know, I
under
don't know if we have
control.
any way of knowing, Mike, but
I
I would
know,
just, you know,
but
common
yet
sense
they
would tell
keep
you,
on
like those
saying that it's
businesses that
under
were
control. It's
looted,
under
I think on 6th
control.
Street, some of them.
Broadway.
I'm sure
Thank the Lord.
that law enforcement is also staged there, I would think, just to make
They've
sure
got a
that
lot
nothing
of
like
law
that happens
enforcement.
Well,
I
again.
think
especially
they
the Adidas
said
store that got hit
they got
twice, you know,
LAPD.
one night after night. This
They've
group right
got
here you're looking at is at Main Street. They
4,000
just turned northbound Main from 5th. And they are starting
US
to walk through here. That
troops,
was
if I'm
just,
not
I was looking at them
mistaken.
because they came down a one-way
And then
road and
they
they were going the wrong way
have
on the one-way. So then you had cars that were
called
trying
in,
to
I think,
correctly use the road,
what was
as
it,
you see right there, which is happening if John tilts
400
up just a little bit. So the group of
Marines,
cars here
2 or
is actually
400
with the
Marines. I can't
protesters. You see them
remember
hanging
the
flags out the
number.
window. And then you have the rest of traffic and people are throwing bottles there. Something just shattered.
See, throwing
And that,
bottles.
let's see, yeah, that
I
looked like it
mean,
irritated
why?
the driver of that SUV there for a second. So I wasn't sure if there was going to be any kind of an encounter. But yeah,
We
all
just
of these
hit the
cars that are coming
SUV,
down the street
guys.
right there are all going the wrong way on 5th Street. So they're making a northbound turn onto Main.
The mayor
Excuse me, and then they're
told
going up.
uh,
But it's obviously impacting
not
traffic,
law
and you've got some of
enforcement,
those bicyclists there that are
but
also holding
told
traffic while their
the
convoy of protesters moves through.
And, you know, we
told
talked
them
about
not
why this curfew went into
to
effect in the
arrest
first place and some of the
unless they
unrest we saw last
absolutely
night,
had
including
to,
a car being
evidently,
set on fire. 22
and that they,
businesses
I
were
mean,
vandalized
she
last
pretty
night,
much
according
said,
to Mayor Bass in her press
yeah,
conference
Mayor
today.
Bass pretty much
Graffiti
said
everywhere. There are a
that,
lot of pictures we can't even show, even though we're doing our best not to
you know,
show
we're going to
profanity and
fight for the
graffiti,
immigrants.
but it's
She said,
unavoidable in some places.
and at
And they've
least,
got a
she said
lawsuit
at least $1
against the
million
Trump
in damage, and
administration
that
now.
was graffiti alone.
And I
That's
feel
just
like, honestly,
incredible.
he's just trying
Yeah,
to
it really
help.
is a lot.
But, you know,
We're going to take a break here, and
I don't know how I feel about
almost
him.
almost a
I
law
don't
enforcement
know
vehicle. No,
how I
that's
feel
someone with
about
the flag.
half of the
Now, the other question:
people over
how
the
do
country,
you
but
stop
I feel like he's
motorists
helping.
Right.
under curfew?
Right, and yeah, I mean, they
We're
could
trying to help.
detain each one of them, tow the cars if they so chose, but
Could you
it makes it harder when they're in
imagine
cars
if
because they can certainly get out of there a lot quicker.
the
Okay, well, we'll be
military
right back. We're going to keep
hadn't
watching
came in?
this, and we'll continue our coverage in a few minutes.
I'm going to shut this down, guys. Could you imagine if law enforcement or the federal people had not came in, guys? I could not imagine what would be going on right now. The whole town, I feel like, would have been destroyed. But thank you guys for joining me. And I know you probably see my little Venmo sticker up there. I don't do this for money at all. I just put it up there just in case if you guys want a tip or anything, because I am not what is it called? Moderated. I'm trying to grow the channel, trying to help, trying to spread awareness. Molly, thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, everyone that came in. SEC 2, number 1. Love the name. Love football, by the way. But thank you, guys. I want you to have a great night. Tomorrow we will talk to Sebastian. Yes, Susie Little. I'm so glad you came in. I'm so happy to have you guys. And we'll grow more and more as time comes. But thank you all so much. You have a good night and peaceful rest, and God bless you.